Welcome to Green Time. I'm host Don Fitz. This episode we're going to look at another look at Ferguson. And with me I have a couple of guests who have been involved in some of the issues of racism and also some of the events in Ferguson. I have Johnathan McFarland with Seen Everywhere. And I also have Kathi Corbett-Otto, who is an activist who's involved in a lot of issues around the St. Louis area. So, Johnathan, you're with Seen Everywhere. What is that?
Seen Everywhere is a nonprofit organization that works with at-risk youth to help them become more self-sufficient.
Oh, fantastic. Okay, so the focus is on young people.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, let me ask you, when we talk about racism in Ferguson, did it pretty much start with the shooting of Michael Brown, or is racism something which has been going on in St. Louis and has a history that we need to be aware of?
Yeah, it has a deep history. And I think a lot of people spoke about all these issues always being issues for a long time. Mm-hmm. And it's just that it's kind of like it's coming to a boiling point right now because, wages are low and oppression is high. And so people are feeling that pressure. And so it's kind of like a powder keg, and Michael Brown was that last straw.
Okay, so you think that for young black people in Ferguson, they had experienced oppression a lot. Yeah. And so when that happened, and what do you think about that shooting? Kathi, was there anything that you noticed about the shooting that would particularly set people off?
I first heard about it from a girl that I was working with part-time. Mm. She came in the morning after he'd been killed in tears. Mm-hmm. She had just seen the video on television, and she had just seen what happened, and she was absolutely devastated. It was a young African-American girl. And she talked about how upset she was. And when I got home and I started, paying attention and following up with people.
What'd she say that upset her? Because people have been killed before. People get shot virtually every day in St. Louis. What about this shooting? This
shooting in particular, it was a young black person, someone her age, basically. I think she's maybe 20 years old. So it was within the same age range. Seemed general, North County-ish neighborhood kind of thing. And it was something that really brought it home to her. Mm. She obviously is aware of racism. She's obviously aware of the violence that takes place and the persecution and the oppression that takes place. But this brought it home to her. Mm. This felt like this could have been her cousin or her brother or her.
What did you think of? Did you say anything about his body laying in the street for 4.5 hours?
Yes, and I think that was one of the big problems. Johnathan probably agree with me on that one. The way that they treated him once he had been killed, leaving him in the street for 4 hours, uncovered, without even ambulances or anything there to check on him. It was shocking in its depravity, really.
It seemed like contempt of black lives by the Ferguson Police Department when that happened.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Completely, I don't know what the word is.
It's sad to me because I feel like I'm used to it, you know? And I don't think people should be used to that. And I think a lot of African Americans I know are used to it.
Yep.
And
that's true.
I actually think my grandparents, what they would tell me is, do not offend white people because they will hang you up by your neck.
Yeah.
And I that's instilled into my parents.
Absolutely.
And so I feel like there needs to be a change.
Absolutely.
Because we cannot live in this fearing anymore. That should be done.
It should be done.
Well, a lot of people said basically when Barack Obama was elected president, we have a black president. So we're in a post-racial society. Racism is over. Do y'all feel that that this was really an exception, and that by and large racism is over in the United States?
No, racism is not over. It's everywhere. It's kind of like you can find it at times being blatant, but most time it's latent. It's kind of just
you don't see it on the surface, but it's boiling there, underneath the surface.
Right there. It's why you don't get that job and why somebody else got that raise or the promotion and it's those things.
Okay, and Kathi, what do you think about white privilege and Why is it white people? Y'all have very different perspectives. So tell me why you think that white people believe or can so easily believe that racism is over and it's not an issue, and cannot. A lot of whites told me they couldn't understand why anybody would be upset about what happened in Ferguson.
Yeah, I heard that from a lot of people, and family members, friends, all over the country, actually. And it's very easy, especially in the St. Louis area. I mean, this area is specifically very much segregated, not only by race, but by income inequality. Yeah. You don't have a whole lot of mixing of those types of groups together. And so people who live out in West County and Mid-County, they're white. They don't see a whole lot of black people, but the black people they do see are generally pretty well off. And so their take on it is, well, they've made good progress. I mean, look, we've got this, we've got a black president. I don't understand what the problem is. And it's because they don't see it happening all the time. As an example, I had a friend who was actually an immigrant to this country. And she came from South Africa, where being white was a liability. And where being white meant that her family was a lot more persecuted and a lot more challenged in terms of being able to find opportunity than she would have been here. And so she was able to come here and work very hard and put herself through school and raise a family, and she's trying to get citizenship right now. She couldn't understand the concept of white privilege. She said, I came here and nobody gave me anything. I worked for everything I have. How am I in any way privileged? And I had to explain it to her that it's not anything you've done or anything that you haven't done. It exists because racism exists. And she was kind of confusing it with the concept of racial profiling.
Right.
And basically, white privilege is the result of the racial profiling. People look at Johnathan or any black man, and they instantly are more on guard. They are more concerned about, his possibility of being a criminal. When young black men are pulled over for stupid things like turn signal violations.
Right. The cops come with the guns pulled out.
That's right. They come with that. And I explained to her, I said, how many times have you gotten a ticket in this city? And I happen to know she's had a few. And I said, have they ever pulled you out of the car, had made you get out of the car with your hands up and searched you? And she said, well, no. And I said, that right there is the white privilege.
Right.
And it's not about us being better, it's about the automatic perceptions.
Right. A lot of white people have, especially people in law enforcement.
Especially people in law enforcement.
Okay. In just a minute, we're going to see a movie, a few minutes of what happened in Ferguson on August the 16th, a week after Michael Brown was killed. Do either of y'all remember the demonstration that happened in Ferguson on August the 16th?
Yes, I was there. It was actually a beautiful event. It was very warming. People were cooking food, passing out food, giving out water, giving out sweets. It was a lot of love out there. And I remember the police, their intention was to shut it down. And I didn't think that was right. I mean, I don't understand why we don't have this particular freedom of expression.
That was one of the complaints, was that right after the killing, when there were demonstrations, that the big effort was to stop all the demonstrations from happening.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, we'll be back in just a minute. Let's take a brief look at the demonstration in Ferguson on August the 16th, a week after the killing of Michael Brown in August 9th, 2014.
Yeah, I wonder too, like, where is it, like, who's doing it, and where's it coming from?
Violent, who's, everybody's,
Here come police, more police, they're bringing in tons of police. Everybody's being peaceful, but they're bringing in tons of police.
Everybody's being peaceful.
sign says "Justice for All." On the other side, it says "Hands up, don't shoot." R.I.P. Mike Brown. Look at everybody.
People always talk about all these hoodlums and da-da-da-da-da. They don't get the same opportunities your children do. They don't get to grow up and be safe. The guy with a puppy. What the hell is that? Is that a news drone?
Welcome back to Green Time. I'm host Don Fitz. We're talking about another look at Ferguson, and with me I have a couple of people who have been very much involved in dealing with racism in St. Louis area. I have Kathi Corbett-Otto, who's an activist, and I have Johnathan McFarland, who is with Seen Everywhere. Now, one of the things that we were just talking about racism and the history of racism. Why is it that the human rights movement hasn't been more successful than it has been? I mean, why, after 500 years over, it's been 150 years, more than 150 years since the outlawing of slavery. Why hasn't there been more progress? Why do we still see this huge racial divide in the U.S.?
Well, a good friend of mine, Crystal Washington, she told me that, it's because people want to take credit for whatever progress is made. Mm-hmm. And when she told me that, I really reflected on that, and I thought about it. I thought about this current day thing that we're doing, and how, I've been to several events, and I've been to this event for this organization. I've been to this event for this organization, and the people who run those organizations are not at anybody else's event. And so I feel like there is that I want credit, or we want credit. We want this particular credit, so we don't support anybody else, and we are.
So the movements, the civil rights movements, basically are too fractionated.
Yeah.
Did you see the same sort of thing going on, Kathi?
Yeah, I did, and I think a lot of it also is generational misunderstanding and mistrust, and a lot of it has to do with, because we have that white privilege, we put up with racism, subtle racism often. From our peers as white people. I will never forget the time I had a roommate when I was in college, and his brother came to visit and started throwing the N-word around. Mm-hmm. That was my house. And I told him, you do not use that word in my house. I do not allow that language. And I said, you do it again and I'm gonna kick you out. And they didn't take me seriously. They really didn't. They didn't think I would seriously kick them out for that kind of language and for that kind of hate speech. And when I did, they were shocked and they were angry with me. And I was like, that's fine. You can be angry if you want, but you're leaving. You're not welcome here anymore. Don't come back.
Right. And so a lot of whites just tolerate that.
A lot of people do.
By their friends and neighbors. Okay, so what do we do to get over this? What are the next steps?
There are so many different things that we can do. The biggest issue is we've got to learn how to communicate with one another. We've got to be able to reach across the invisible divide and say, look, I don't want to offend you, but I'm trying to understand this issue. And what does this mean to you? And how do we work it out? How do I treat Black people in public when They don't know me from Adam, and they don't know that I'm very much involved in civil rights and that I'm supportive of them. All they know is that I'm a white girl.
Yeah.
And what am I going to, I could very easily be someone that would be harmful to them or, cause problems for them.
Yeah.
And they don't know. And so how do I make Black people feel more comfortable around me? But also, what do I do to make the world a better place? How do I explain this to other people that I get the privilege of speaking to about it, because they're not afraid to talk to another white person about it?
Yeah.
Okay. Johnathan, do you have anything that you could add to that?
Yeah. Well, I think like typically Black people are so guarded, and that just something that people should understand, that because of the maybe what has happened to people in their life. Like, I feel like I'm a very guarded person, and actually, my girlfriend she's white, and she tells me, you are very guarded, and I am, and I know it, and I try to be more candid, but it's hard. But also, people should learn more. People should go out and learn the facts of racism, and then also try to understand the psychological, what happens psychologically when somebody is oppressed, because they become guarded. They become guarded.
Okay, well, let's get back to the movements being divided. I mean, there's all sorts of issues that people are working on now. There's racism, there's sexism, there's lesbian, gay, bi, transgender, there's pay scales. How do we pull these sorts of, would they be more powerful pulling them together, or do they really need to be separate in order to be effective?
I think that if we can pull a lot of those together and find a way to really move forward, that would be the best possible solution. Because what we're dealing with overall is societal oppression. And there isn't a hierarchy of oppression. Johnathan has some privilege as a man that I don't have as a woman. I have privilege as a white person that he doesn't have as a Black man. And there are, varying degrees of both privilege and oppression. We need to quit arguing over who's got it worse and start focusing on the oppressors and start focusing on what we do to change that.
Yeah.
And I think if we can work together, that we will make a lot better progress.
Yeah, I totally agree.
So these are not issues which are over. It's the now that McDonald's has promised to pay instead of $9.15 an hour, $9.90 an hour. I don't know how long it'll be before they get to $9.90 an hour. Does that mean that issues like wages of low-wage workers, is that issue over, and is that really different from fighting racism and sexism?
It is not over by a long shot. I feel like people should have a discussion about what happened in 2008 and 2009 when the federal government created $17 trillion. What happened was they doubled the amount of money in our economy, and that devalued the dollar by half. And so if minimum wage at that time was $7.25, you need to double that amount, and that'd be more. Actually, it'd be more like what we had.
Okay. Now tell me, we're going to see a movie about the August 30th demonstration. Kathi, were you in that demonstration of August 30th, 2014? What do you remember about it?
I remember that it was a very moving demonstration. There were thousands of people there.
At the Canfield apartments?
Yes, at Canfield, up and down Florissant Road. And there were people of every sort there.
It's a wider, the sort of movement that you're talking that was people not just interested in racism.
Exactly. White people, Black people, mixed race people, you name it.
Okay, let's take a look at the movie right now about the demonstration of August 30th in Ferguson.
This is so many people. I can't even begin to tell you how many people are here. This is, it's a big deal. Lots of people. People who can't participate, hanging out on the sidelines, chant along with people, but hands up. It's a big deal to a lot of people. It goes back. You can't see the end of this. You can't see the end of it. You can't see the end of it. This goes past where he was killed, all the way down. I can't zoom, but I'm going to show you how many people are here. This is beautiful. I'm sorry, babe. I just wanted to get like the scope of how many people are here. I know. This is beautiful.
Welcome to the final couple of minutes of Green Time. I'm Don Fitz. With me, I have Johnathan McFarland with Seen Everywhere. I have Kathi Corbett-Otto who's an activist, and we're talking about another look at Ferguson. Now, Johnathan, is there something that you would like the viewers to take with them from the show?
That is that the DOJ report,
Department of Justice?
The Department of Justice, that was proof to the oppression that Black people suffer because of racial bias. And you can see it actually, it is shown by them showing all the looters repeatedly, you know.
Oh, the repeated emphasis on looters, not the repeated emphasis on cops leaving the body of Michael Brown there, not on, you know, the cops threatening, but on looting is like the only thing to see.
Right, and the thing where basically they equated looters with protesters, when the majority of the protesters, as we know, that we were involved with, were actually protesting, carrying signs, bringing the attention to the problems that we have, not only with the police and their persecution of Black people, but the entire systemic problem. And yeah, there were looters, but they were not the same as the protesters.
Fantastic. Okay, I want to, Johnathan McFarland, thank you for your insights, and I hope that people get more familiar with Seen Everywhere. And Kathi Corbett-Otto, I want to thank you very much for participating in the show, and I want everybody to think about a lot of the issues that were raised on the show tonight. We covered a lot of territory. I hope you enjoyed the episode. I hope you tune in to Green Time at the same time next week.